Welcome back, everyone. Today we're unpacking a massive topic, demystifying the profound, frankly fascinating, strategic and psychological differences between business-to-business and business-to-consumer marketing. Whether you're building an e-commerce platform right from scratch, or maybe you're just sitting there wondering why your current digital storefront isn't getting those conversions, well, understanding the massive divide between these two types of buyers is absolutely critical. We're going to break down the actual mechanics of how and why these audiences buy so you can finally align your strategies for maximum impact. Let's get into it.
Here's a quick look at our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to cover the two marketing worlds, logic versus emotion, look at a really cool case study on organic products, explore the e-commerce divide, and wrap up with the B2B digital advantage.
All right, part one, the two marketing worlds.
So we need to establish right out of the gate that B2B and B2C, they aren't just trendy acronyms you toss around in a marketing meeting. We're talking about entirely different behavioral landscapes. The absolute baseline difference, it really boils down to who your target audience is and what's at stake for them. Over in the B2B sector, you're targeting an enterprise, so your messaging has to be highly informational. It's got to focus heavily on ROI and operational efficiency. And why is that? Well, because a professional buyer's actual job, literally, their reputation is on the line. If they mess up and buy the wrong software or the wrong bulk materials, it impacts the whole company. But then on the flip side, B2C targets the individual consumer. This messaging leans way more into being expressive. It's all about lifestyle, personal satisfaction, and choices that, let's be honest, are often pretty impulsive. If a consumer buys a pair of sneakers they end up hating, no big deal, right? The stakes are super low.
There's actually a brilliant way to picture this volume and scale difference. This quote comes from our source material at ECI Software Solutions, and I love this. In B2B, it's like a business throwing a big party and buying supplies in bulk, while B2C is more like someone shopping for their weekly groceries. It's such a great metaphor, right? The sheer volume, the logistics, and the entire intent behind filling up that shopping cart. They're just completely different.
Moving on to section 2, logic versus emotion.
Now that we know who we're talking to, we really have to dig into the underlying psychology that drives these two different engines. This study from the International Journal of Novel Research and Development does a fantastic job of breaking down the stark contrasts in how decisions are made. It's fascinating. A consumer's decision is categorized almost entirely as emotional. Their demand is just based on a wish. But a B2B decision, it is strictly rational. The demand is based on a concrete, undeniable business need. Think about it. In B2C, you've got one single person deciding to satisfy a personal craving or desire. But in B2B, you're dealing with a whole committee of people trying to navigate risk to fulfill an operational requirement.
And these psychological differences completely dictate the actual purchasing process. Because B2C is driven by that individual emotion and those wishes, the buying process is incredibly short. It happens fast, usually with just an instantaneous tap of a credit card or digital wallet. But B2B, wow. Because it's a logical decision based on actual need and risk mitigation, the sales cycle just stretches out. It takes multi-person approvals from a buying committee, which, by the way, is usually like 6 to 10 people. The payment systems are complex, you've got purchase orders, invoicing, delayed terms. There is virtually zero personal emotion involved when that final signature happens. It's all about terms of trade, reliability, and protecting the bottom line.
Which brings us to section 3, a really interesting case study on organic products.
Okay, so it's one thing to talk about all of this in academic theory, right? But we need some concrete proof. Researchers took a look at RMS Chandravatani organic superstores down in Tamil Nadu, India. Now, this is a business that operates in both the B2B and the B2C spaces. So the researchers surveyed exactly 50 B2B buyers, think retailers and wholesalers, and 50 B2C buyers, just everyday individual consumers, across 3 local districts. What this does is give us this perfectly balanced view of how these two completely different groups behave when they're looking at the exact same category of goods, organic products.
And the crucial takeaway is right here in the data. When asked why they purchase organic products, a whopping 70% of the B2C buyers said their primary driver was health. They're buying for their own personal well-being. It's an emotional, personal lifestyle choice. But what about the B2B buyers? Their primary motivations were split right down the middle. 26% said it was about hard profit margin, and another 26% said supplier relationship. See, those B2B buyers aren't buying organic because it makes them feel healthy and glowing. They're buying it because the margins make sense for their business, and they actually trust the supplier to deliver the goods on time.
And this split personality, if you will, extends across the entire marketing mix. When researchers applied some statistical modeling, specifically something called the Mann-Whitney U-test, they found something super interesting. While both groups actually have pretty similar positive reactions to promotions, meaning, hey, everyone loves a good discount or a clever ad, they completely diverge when it comes to pricing, distribution, and branding. B2C consumers, they're totally willing to accept higher pricing if they perceive higher quality. B2B buyers, they demand bulk pricing discounts, period. B2C wants to find these products easily in supermarkets, whereas B2B demands a wide, highly reliable distribution network to keep their shelves stocked.
I really want to highlight this one surprising fact from the data, especially regarding branding. 64% of everyday consumers strongly agreed that branding heavily influences their purchase of organic goods. But jump over to the B2B camp, 30% were completely neutral, and get this, 24% actively disagreed that branding mattered to them at all. No way, right? But in the B2B market, the functional and economic aspects completely overshadow a fancy brand identity or a sleek logo. If the product meets the standard and the price is right, the enterprise buyer honestly could not care less about the logo on the box.
All right, moving to section 4, the e-commerce divide.
So now that we've definitively proven this massive psychological divide, we have to apply it to modern digital sales. Here's a question for you. Why won't a standard B2C e-commerce platform meet your B2B needs? It's kind of a provocative question, but it perfectly frames the catastrophic failure that businesses experience when they ignore everything we just talked about. If you try to force a complex B2B buyer into a basic B2C digital shopping cart, you are absolutely going to lose the sale. And here's exactly why.
First off, let's look at the immediate pain points. Standard consumer platforms simply cannot handle the sheer complexity of a B2B transaction. B2B requires really custom, intricate pricing structures. We're talking volume tiers and customer-specific negotiated contracts. B2C platforms usually just display one fixed price for everyone, right? Second, B2B requires extended payment terms, like net 30 or net 60 days. They aren't just pulling out a credit card up front. And third, like we touched on earlier, B2B platforms absolutely must be able to route a cart through multi-level approvals before an order is even finalized. A standard retail cart, it just doesn't do that.
But it's not just the checkout button. There are massive back-end technological hurdles too. B2B products often require some heavy customization and configuration that a simple drop-down menu on a website just can't handle. On top of that, B2B operations require deep, complex integrations with a company's ERP, that's Enterprise Resource Planning, and their CRM systems. A true B2B platform is syncing inventory, supply chain data, and detailed analytics in real time. B2C platforms, they generally just offer basic analytics that don't come close to providing the depth of insight an enterprise needs to forecast and actually run their business.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 5, the B2B digital advantage. So, if a standard consumer site is going to fail you, what happens when you actually build it right? Well, implementing a true, purpose-built B2B e-commerce platform completely transforms a business. Step 1. It streamlines the ordering process. You finally end the nightmare era of back-and-forth emails, playing phone tag, and manual order entry. Your customers can just log in, see their custom pricing, and hit reorder with a single click. Step 2. This directly increases cost efficiency. By automating that sales process, you are slashing administrative overhead and virtually eliminating those costly manual data entry errors. And step 3, you instantly expand your market reach. Your digital storefront is open 24/7, which lets you scale incredibly cost-effectively, way beyond your local geographic territory.
And I want to leave you with a number that you absolutely must remember, 57%. According to industry research, 57% of B2B purchasing decisions are made before a buyer ever even contacts a sales rep. Just think about that for a second. The modern B2B buyer wants a seamless, self-service online portal where they can do their own research, check their highly specific pricing, and evaluate products entirely on their own schedule. If you don't have a robust B2B platform ready for them, you are literally invisible for more than half of their decision-making process. Which really brings us to our final thought for this explainer. Are your digital storefronts truly built for the psychological and operational needs of your specific buyers? Because listen, it's no longer enough to just be online. If you are selling to businesses, you have got to build for the logic, the committees, the custom pricing, and the intense operational efficiency that they demand. So take a hard look at your own strategies and make sure you're respecting the great divide between B2B and B2C. Thanks so much for joining me for this analysis, and as always, keep learning.